We're not just an AI cloud, we're an application cloud.
You have 4.5 million developers on the platform.
Now over 5.
Oh wow, 5.
We're still hiring. We're continuing to hire. Yeah, we have a lot to do, so we want to make sure we can grow the team to do everything that we want to do this year. We'll likely double in size this year. It is all about making sure that we're all moving in the same direction.
As a founder who just raised at $1.5 billion, are you worried about the environment you're operating in? Every few months, a company comes across my desk where I look at the numbers and I just don't fully believe them. 4.5 million developers, revenue growing over 100% year over year, a zero marketing team for most of that growth, $157 million raised, $1.5 billion valuation, and the product, a cloud platform competing directly with Amazon and Google. That company is Render, and the person who built it is sitting across from me right now. Anurag, I've been waiting to have this conversation for a while. Thanks for the time.
Thank you for having me.
Render was started in 2018. The same year Kubernetes became mainstream. Same year AWS already had 30% of global cloud market. Every smart investor I know would have said, the market is closed. The big players already won. How did you convince yourself and then your investors that this was not already over?
Yeah, the fact that people thought the market was closed was the primary reason I started the company. When I knew from my own personal experience that building any sort of application and then running it on the cloud remained inaccessible to most people unless you had built up a lot of experience with how to work with AWS or GCP or one of the hyperscalers. And I saw that every company was building large teams of DevOps engineers just to manage a lot of the same kind of things on AWS. And that experience both from Stripe, where I joined as the 5th engineer and was there through 2016, as well as my own experience and then building things after Stripe, led me to very confidently believe that there's a huge opportunity in serving application developers. And that's still what Render is. In general, we're serving the people who are writing the code, the people who are building the applications, as opposed to, say, the people who understand AWS.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
You spent 2 years after Stripe trying different ideas, healthcare, GPU notebooks, other things. You had money, you had freedom, you could have picked anything. Why did you end up solving infrastructure? Most people I talk to who can pick anything go toward AI or consumer. Infrastructure is not glamorous. What pulled you here?
Yeah, well, often the biggest problems are the least glamorous ones. And you could say the same thing about Stripe back in the day. Payments are not glamorous. The interesting thing about Render was that it was an idea that I kept coming back to because of my own personal affinity with making life easier, much easier and faster for application development teams. I'm an application developer myself. I also build infrastructure. And at the time, it was very clear to me that this whole system was broken. And I actually built something for data scientists, a company called Crestle, which was one of the first companies to offer GPU-backed notebooks on the web. But that was not my long-term idea. I always wanted something that I could work on for several decades, having gone through the Stripe experience and having had that fortunate freedom. And I knew that solving this problem of infrastructure and application development on the cloud was not going to be a 5-year journey or a 10-year journey, and that I could eventually build a generational company in this space, but it would take time, and that was exactly the kind of problem I was looking for.
Thank you, very interesting. The classic pitch for Render is easier than AWS, more scalable than Heroku, but that's a positioning statement. I want to understand the product decision that actually makes developers stay. Not just sign up, but actually migrate the whole stack to you and not go back.
Yeah, there are a lot of decisions that we've made along the way, and I don't think Render is successful because of a single thing. We make decisions every day, and it started from the basic principle of providing the best experience for application developers who are simply trying to get their applications online and run them reliably, scalably, and confidently. And it's easy to build something that makes it very easy to get started, especially now with AI. It's much harder to build something that scales. It's much harder to build something that is reliable, that is secure. And that is the hard work that you do that makes people stay. When they see that they can continue to scale with you. So we've continued to add features and capabilities to our platform that allow companies to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And so we have companies that spend millions of dollars on Render every year, but these companies started out spending, $7 a month on the platform. But it's the product decisions, it's the infrastructure maturity, the reliability, the security, everything that we obsess about every day. Those are the things that I think help people trust us over the long term.
I love that approach. Thank you. You have 4.5 million developers on the platform.
Now over 5.
Oh, wow, 5 million developers. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Zero came from paid marketing or sales. It's all word of mouth. I've seen developer tool companies try and replicate this and fail completely. What specifically are you doing or not doing to make developers talk about Render?
It goes back to really focusing on building the best product. The good thing about developers is that they really appreciate it when they see a great product, and especially something that helps them get their jobs done. And they're very vocal online, and they want to tell other developers about it. So that's really what led to the growth of Render and continues to be the major source of our growth even now. There have been other moments. For example, back in 2022, Heroku shut down their free tier. And that was actually the first time a lot of companies heard about Render. And then they realized that Render wasn't just good enough for the free tier. It had much better functionality. It was much more scalable and flexible than Heroku. And you didn't really need to graduate to AWS if you were on Render. And again, moments like that tend to help increase our awareness as a step function. But at the end of the day, it's still about the product and about people telling other people about how great the product is.
Great approach, thank you. ChatGPT recommends Render when developer asks where to deploy their apps. You didn't pay for that. You didn't do SEO for it. It just happened. From a business perspective, how do you think about this? Is this distribution you can count on, or is it fragile?
I don't know if this is something that we count on necessarily. However, I'd say that at least today, chatbots make recommendations based on what they're seeing developers are already saying about a product online. And so I think if we stay true to the principle of making sure that we focus on the product, focus on making it the best place for application developers to spin up any kind of application, whether it's an AI native app or not, then developers will continue to talk positively about Render, which I think will continue to make us appear in the recommendations by ChatGPT and Claude. So again, yeah, I don't know if you can influence those things, but you can influence your product, and you can influence what people say about it by making sure that you're serving their needs better than anyone else.
Nice, thank you. Right now, more than half of your top customers are building AI applications. But Render was not originally built for AI workloads. You built it for regular web applications. What changed in the product to make it the right fit for AI? Or was it already right and you just didn't know it yet?
Yeah, we realized that our architecture and the way we built Render was already really well suited to AI applications. And that's because there are providers that are more front-end focused, like Vercel with Next.js, or even Cloudflare with the CDN and workers. And people building AI native apps realize that what they actually want is long-running backends. What they want is stateful applications. And that is what Render was already doing. Production grade, reliable, scalable, stateful applications. And so we just naturally saw a lot of people migrate over to us from these front-endy platforms. And they started using us for the core parts of their AI applications. Now they're interested in having Render build the newer parts of their stack that are pure AI native. For example, we just launched a workflows product that allows people to coordinate agent tasks really easily. We're going to be launching sandboxes and an AI gateway, but all of these things came later after the core basis of the platform turned out to be really suitable for AI native applications. And then the users who are using us for those things, they don't want 5 different platforms for each individual feature. They want everything to be on Render. And so now that's making us go into this new direction and expand our platform to make it work even better for additional AI use cases.
Thank you. There is a real argument that the AI infrastructure market, agentic runtimes, long-running compute, workflow orchestration, is exactly where AWS, Google, and Microsoft are putting their biggest bets right now. They have more employees, more data centers, more capital than you. Why does Render will win this specific fight?
Yeah, while all of those things might be true, the focus of Render versus the focus of AWS and others is very different. We focus always on application developers and more recently on agents building infrastructure and applications. And the hyperscalers have always focused on the people who understand how to spin up Kubernetes clusters and VMs, right? That's who they build for. We think that Render wins this in this new era because more and more companies want to move really fast. They're able to write code much faster, and they cannot wait on this bottleneck that DevOps teams tend to create in any large company. And so they want to be able to use Render and products like it to get their applications to production as quickly as possible in a way that is stable and secure and reliable. So that's how we're seeing workloads migrate to Render from, say, AWS or Google or other places because of the ability of application teams to move really fast and because they have no patience anymore for all the additional undifferentiated work that they have to do on AWS and others.
Makes sense. Thank you. You said publicly that the AI bubble, if it is one, is still different from crypto because real value is being created. I want to push on that. Right now, we're seeing companies raise 100x revenue multiples on AI products that are 6 months old. As a founder who just raised at $1.5 billion, are you worried about the environment you're operating in?
Well, I'd be worried about Render if we had raised at 100x revenue, but we didn't. It was much lower than that. I don't worry about the environment from a Render standpoint because, again, Render is not just an AI platform. There are companies out there that are calling themselves the AI cloud. And some of the companies I've mentioned so far definitely do that. And in many ways, we are not calling ourselves AI native or AI cloud. For us, we're focused on application developers and the things they're building. And whether that's AI or not, we're always going to be there. And we're helping them with AI applications because that's what a lot of them are building now. But let's say the bubble burst, people will still be building other kinds of applications. And Render will still be there to help them put those applications in the cloud easily, quickly, because again, we're not just an AI cloud, we're an application cloud.
Nice, thank you. For the investors watching this, walk me through Render business model. You charge based on compute usage.
Yes.
As AI applications need more compute, your revenue grows automatically with your customers.
Yes.
Is it the right way to think about it? And what does it mean for margin as you scale?
Yeah, great question. So yes, so the fact that Render has grown revenue so quickly is because of two things. One, certainly AI applications often need a lot more compute, and they need long-running stateful compute, and that's what Render does really well. So we're really well suited, and more people are building those kinds of applications on Render. The second thing is that a lot of our customers and a lot of newer customers, or even a lot of large enterprises, they're all now building a lot more software. Thankfully, Cloud Code and Codex and other coding agents have become quite good at this point. And so they allow companies to build a lot of bespoke software faster. So there's just much more software in the world. And as a result of that, a lot of it is being deployed in the cloud. And when you have to deploy so much software in the cloud, you just don't have the patience to wait for AWS DevOps. You go for the fastest way to do it in a way that is still reliable, that is still secure, that can scale with you over time. And that's where Render tends to be the best fit. So we think that Render is benefiting, obviously, in general from this, but the usage-based model is what's really driving our growth. And we believe that the amount of software in the world will continue to grow exponentially, which puts us in a pretty good position, I'd say.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
General Catalyst, Bessemer, Edition, there's a series of institutional investors. At $1.5 billion valuation, they expect a very specific return. How does the exit path look like for Render, and what do you tell investors when they ask about timeline?
Yeah, look, I think all of these investors have invested with the long-term expectation of a public listing for Render. And I think that makes sense. I think given our plans, given our goals of becoming a generational company, being public is certainly something that we aspire to. However, we're still a few years away from that. And in terms of timelines, though, our investors, when they invested in Render, they believed in the core thesis behind the company, and they knew that I was doing this for the very long term. So we chose investors who were much more likely to be patient, and they are, and they have been. And so they're not pushing us to, go public next year, because they want to make sure that when the company does go public, that we're really well positioned for it. That doesn't mean that they don't raise urgency, as any good investor should. And we take that very seriously. So we're going as fast as we can, but as far as going public is concerned, I tend to say a few years, and we'll see how quickly we get there.
Nice, thank you. You mentioned that you want Render to be what you called a generational company, something that overlasts you. That is a very different mindset from most founders who think about exit in 5 years. Where does it come from, and does it ever create tension with your investors?
Yeah, it comes from the original motivation, which is, after Stripe, I could have done anything. And I chose this problem because it really spoke to me and because I really wanted to solve it. And it's been 8 years, and I'm more excited than I was at the start to solve this problem, partly because we've been able to build a really, really strong foundation of, over 5 million developers on the platform, and just really, really strong revenue growth. I don't think that doing this over the long term and being a generational company is at odds with the sense of urgency that we have day to day. And so we still operate with a level of urgency that I think any good founder would want their company to have, because there's so much to do. And you always have certain opportunities in the market that you want to take when they arise. And we're going through one such period where we have to capture the market, and there's a time component to it. And so we're still trying to hire really quickly. We're still trying to grow really quickly. But yes, it's a generational company because the market is so massive, and because the broad scale of what we're trying to do is so ambitious.
Nice, thank you. Vercel just raised at $9.3 billion. Fly.io, Railway, and a dozen others are all going after the same developer infrastructure market. When you look at that competitive landscape, who do you actually worry about and why?
Yeah, I don't actually worry about anyone in that list, partly because we've seen people migrate to us from all of those providers for different reasons. I think when it comes to, say, Vercel, again, much more of a front-end focused cloud, all kinds of limitations in their architecture that they're trying to change, but Render's already built for this new moment and for long-running stateful workloads. And so we see a lot of migrations from them to us for that reason. And then for the other providers you mentioned, a lot of people migrate to us because Render has proven to be the most reliable, scalable platform that scales with you as you grow without any kind of availability issues or bugs or the other things that these platforms tend to run into. The company I still think about is AWS, because I think that for Render, we want to make sure that people change their defaults. And AWS is the default for any serious, successful, large company. And it'll take a while for us to change that default. But I think the current situation is helping us because a lot of people are realizing that, again, to move fast and to really succeed in the market and to outcompete other companies, you need a cloud that can move fast with you and that can help you scale. And you really don't have the time to spend building up very large DevOps teams and having every application be managed by them on AWS. And so from that standpoint, I'm hoping that over time the defaults change. And I'm already, some people are calling AWS the boomer cloud. And with generational change, these defaults do tend to change, and that's what I'm hoping for.
Fair enough, thank you. You have been running Render for 7 years. In 2018, you were writing code alone. Now you have 60 plus people, institutional investors, OpenAI as a partner. What is the harder thing about running Render today that had nothing to do with technology?
Yeah, well, most things that I do these days have to do with people instead of technology. And when I was starting the company, I could solve every problem myself. And I could write the code, I could fix it, I could talk to the customers, keep iterating. We didn't even have AI coding back then. I wish we did, but whatever. But now, as we grow to, now we're actually more than 100 people and beyond, we will likely double in size this year. It is all about making sure that we're all moving in the same direction, that why we're here and how we're going to achieve our goals, even what our goals are, that is clear to every single person in the company at a very basic fundamental level, because that's the only way you can move the entire company in the right direction, and that's the only way you can move fast, where people make the decisions that you would make, or they make better decisions. But in order to do that, they need the context that you have as CEO. And so a lot of my job is about making sure that everyone has the context that they need to do their jobs. And then a lot of it is about continuing to hire amazing people and build Render into the kind of place that people want to work at over the very, very long term. And so the first engineer I hired in 2018, he still works here because he's very excited about Render's opportunity, and he sees that we have so much more ahead of us.
Nice, very interesting, and very cool that the person you hired in 2018 is still working. How many people are now working?
I think 110 people now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, and then we're still hiring. We're continuing to hire, we have a lot to do, so we want to make sure we can grow the team to do everything that we want to do this year.
How does your hiring process is looking?
Yeah, we've got a really strong team of recruiters.
Okay.
And then a lot of people at Render also refer their friends, and they enjoy working here, and so referrals often end up being still a great source for us to hire.
Okay, and all people work in San Francisco or in different?
No, we're actually only about 40% in SF, and the rest of the company is distributed mostly across the US.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
One moment I found very interesting in your story. You built Jupyter notebook product, got 10,000 users, and then you sold it through a tweet.
Yes.
Most founders would have kept going. What made it easy for you to walk away from something that was working?
So it was all about what else I was interested in at the time. And while I built Jupyter, Crestle, which was the name of the company, built that Jupyter notebook company for data scientists, I still identified more deeply with application developers. And I also knew that the problem that application developers were facing, that problem was much bigger in scope, and it was more ambitious, and it would take longer to solve. So because I had that, I kept coming back to wanting to solve that problem instead. And that made it easy for me to say, okay, you know what? While this is working, I would rather spend all my time on this other thing, which I know I'm going to find personally much more fulfilling for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So that was one of the easier decisions I've made.
Nice, thank you. Last question, 3 years from now, if Render is everything you want it to be, how does that company look like? Revenue, product, market position? I'd love to hear your vision.
Absolutely. We were just talking about defaults. 3 years from now, I would love for Render to be one of the defaults that every company looks at, not just startups, but also larger companies. And AWS being the default is no longer true. In terms of revenue, of course, we're likely doing hundreds of millions of dollars, and are making sure that we're growing at a really healthy rate still. And we're probably hundreds of people at this company because there's just so much to do. And we're still building, and this is really important, we're still building the best products in the market for application developers to grow and scale their applications. And at that point, I think you could also include agents in the mix, as we have started doing now. So not just for application developers, but also for agentic software to deploy and run in the cloud. All of those things, if they're true, I'd be pretty happy at the 3-year mark.
Anurag, this was a really good conversation. Render is one of those companies where business fundamentals, the market timeline, and the product all in line in a way you don't see very often. Thank you for your time and for having us here at your office.
Thank you. It was great.